Harry Terril. His Quaker forebears moved westward early in the 19th century. A South Carolinian ancestor was hanged by the British following the Battle of Cowpens. He would not betray the guerrillas. But he wasn't quite dead. His wife revived him, and he lived to a ripe old age to tell the tale. It is a rainy Saturday in Des Moines. As he recalls the late 20s and early 30s, in this plastic-oriented room of a large motel chain, he feels alien, though he has lived in this region all his life, 77 years. He had worked as a YMCA secretary, but I had naturally been a farmer, 'cause I never went off the farm until I went to college when I was 22 years old. 320 acres of farmland, fine land, that my uncle owned and cleared. He lost it, 'cause they foreclosed the mortgage. Some of the best in the state, and he couldn't borrow a dime. The farmers didn't have anything they could borrow on. He came down here to see me because he knew that a fellow that had a job could get credit. He wanted to borrow $850. I knew my banker would give it to me, so I told him I'd get it. He said, "Harry, I want to give you a mortgage to support this loan." I said, "I'd never take a mortgage from my brother's brother." But here's what he put up. A John Deere combine and tractor, a team of mules and wagons and farm implements, and about 16 head of cattle for $850. So you can see how far this had gone. He couldn't get a loan. A man who lived in this state from the time he was 2 years old. I was born across the road from the farm of Herbert Hoover's uncle. I knew the Hoover family, distant cousins of the president. My folks sold hogs for him, thoroughbred, pure Chester white hogs at 2 cents a pound. Even people like them, they had times just like the rest of us. That's the way it was going. Corn was going for 8 cents a bushel. One county insisted on burning corn to heat the courthouse, because it was cheaper than coal. This was at the time that mortgaging of farms was getting home to us. So they was having 10-cent sales. They'd put up a farmer's property and have a sale, and all the neighbors come in, and they got the idea of spending 25 cents for a horse. They was paying 10 cents for a plow, and when it was all over, they'd all give back to him. It was legal, and anybody bid against that thing that was trying to get that man's land, they would be dealt with seriously, as it were. That infuriated all the people that wanted to carry on business as usual. It might be a bank, or an implement dealer, or a private elevator, or something like that. They had their investments in this. The implement dealer, he was on that line too. The only place he had of getting it was from the fellow who owed him, and they'd have a sheriff's sale. The people were desperate. They came very near hanging that judge, because they caught this judge foreclosing farm mortgages, and they had no other way of stopping it. He had issued a whole bunch of foreclosures on his docket. It all happened in the Mars. They took the judge out of his court and took him to the fairgrounds, and they had a rope around his neck, and they had the rope over the limb of a tree. They were gonna string him up in the old horse thief fashion. But somebody had sense enough to stop the thing before it got too far. They had marches, just like we have marches nowadays. They came from all over the state. That was the time of the farm holiday. There was a picket line. The farm holiday movement was to hold the stuff off the market to increase the price. It saw its violence too. They stopped milk wagons, dumped milk. They stopped farmers hauling their hay to market. They undertook to stop the whole agricultural process. They thought if they could block the highways and access to the packing plants, They couldn't buy these hogs at 2 cents a pound. They'd say, "We're gonna meet just east of Cherokee at the fork of the road," and so on. Now they spread it around the country that they were gonna stop everything from going through, and believe me, they stopped it. They had whatever was necessary to stop them with. Some of them had pitchforks. You can fix the auto tire good with a pitchfork. There were blockades. The country was getting up in arms about taking a man's property away from him. It was his livelihood. When you took a man's horses and his plow away, you denied him food. You just convicted his family to starvation. It was just that real. I remember one man, as devout a man as I ever met, a Catholic. He was mixed up in it too, with violence. His priest tried to cool him down. He says, "My God, Father, we're desperate. We don't know what to do." He was the most old established man you could find. He was in the state legislature. I remember in court when they were going to indict a Norwegian Quaker, when they were offering them lighter sentences if they'd plead guilty. His wife said, "Simon, thee must go to jail." Did they ever talk about changing the society? No. The nearer to the ground you get, the nearer you are to conservative. His land is his life, and he's not for anything that might alter the situation. I never found anything in the Iowa farmer to indicate he would accept any form of government but his own. If my family, grandfather, great-grandfather ever heard my political beliefs, why, they'd turn over in their graves. I don't think that without the Depression, this farm country would be anything but McKinley Republican. You know, Hitler's men were awfully interested that I'd been through a farm strike in northern Iowa. I was in Germany with my wife as a tourist in '37. I had been to Geneva for a disarmament conference. I met Hitler's agricultural attaché in Berlin. They were just putting controls on their farmers. He wanted to know how this violence was handled. He kept getting madder and madder. I said, "What do you do with these people?" He said, "They've got to come to terms with the government or we'll just wipe them out." The New Deal came along. The progress was very slow, though, of course. Henry Wallace, in his ever-normal granary, was the man who saved the farmer. The farmer would have passed clear out of the picture. They took his corn and paid for it and stored it. They put a price on it that was above the miserable going price. It wasn't allowed for no 8 cents a bushel. The farmers broke the laws as a last resort. There was nothing else for them to do. To see these neighbors wiped out completely, and they would just drift into towns, and they would have to be fed. Oh, these towns are pathetic. Today, you'll pass through towns, and if you get off the highway a little ways and went down the main street, it's one vacant building after another. Little ghost towns with an elevator and a service station. It's an abject depression now for the small farmer. My brother-in-law still has the farm that his father took when he came out here as a young man. The reason he can stay in business is that he turns everything he got on that farm into cattle feed and turns it into beef. Beef prices are decent because beef is used by factory workers. But the grain farmer, the farmer who gets cash out of his crop, he's feeling the pinch of poverty. Many of the farm families can't get any of their family to farm it. The children are going to the cities. The farm is just going on the block and is added to some other big land holding in the community. The individual farmer is becoming a thing of the past. Larger and larger holdings, fewer and fewer people. even a fellow farming 800 acres now, which he doesn't own, is right up against the buzzsaw. The war economy is not helping the farmer? No, it isn't. Not the small farmer. He's getting the worst of it, all of the time. You never see a war help the farmer, except temporarily. Much as I hate to say it, the Second World War did end the Great Depression. I think we solve our problems by killing our boys and others. But I can see a depression ahead right now. If we go to pot, it would make that one look like a Sunday school picnic. A depression today would cut deep, quick. Today, in the machine age, like everything, it would be sudden. In the 30s, my sister's family lived on their own production. They had gardens, they had flocks of chickens, they had eggs. Now, the eggs are all produced in these large establishments. Machines turn out thousands of dozens. Then they had their own and were more self-sufficient. Today, the milk is supplied by the same company that supplies this dining room here. They didn't have money to buy new clothes or cars or machinery, but they had enough to keep body and soul together. Today, the money would be gone. They wouldn't have the food. People today have been taught violence, the denial of humanity under money pressure. People are going in that direction. I don't think they tolerate those conditions that we came through. The younger people wouldn't take it because they know it isn't necessary. But you can't have a lot of people in Congress that you got today.